Hello, guys. Welcome back. JE Live. I'm Jake Ellenbogen. Joining me, as always, with these types of things. We've done all sorts of fun stuff over at downtownrams.com, doing all sorts of rankings. Will we bring it back this year? If you guys read that series, we appreciate it. But we're going to bring it back again. Blaine, welcome back to the show. Cannot wait to go through this offense and hear your top 10 and share my top 10 with everyone.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I can't wait to bring back the DTR top 10 as well, breaking down the offense.
Yeah, no, I mean, we had so much fun doing it. And I mean, there's a lot of names here. It's hard to really narrow it down, but I found the offense a little bit easier than the defense. I don't know if you would agree with me there. So let's get into it. At quarterback, we'll share our top 10, and I'll share my top 10 first, and then you let me know anything that really sticks out to you, and I'll elaborate more. But coming in at number 1 for me was Patrick Mahomes. I do think, Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback heading into 2021. I wouldn't disagree with other options like Aaron Rodgers, who won MVP, Tom Brady, anybody like that. But I have Patrick Mahomes at 1, Aaron Rodgers at 2, Lamar Jackson at 3, Russell Wilson at 4, Deshaun Watson at 5. That's barring if he plays, of course. Matthew Stafford at 6, Josh Allen at 7, Dak Prescott at 8, Tom Brady at 9, and Justin Herbert barely clipping ahead, Kyler Murray at 10.
Wow, Jake. I think the one that really sticks out for me, and I just think it's really high because, there's no doubting his talent, but it's when teams force him to stay in the pocket for the ball, he can't seem to do it effectively, and that's Lamar Jackson. I just think 3 is way too high for him. There's no doubt. I think he's a good quarterback, but I think we've seen when the Ravens go up against these good teams that take away his ability to kind of escape the pocket and run, and he's forced to stand back there and throw the ball. His accuracy goes away. His mechanics start to go. So that one was a little surprising for me. But outside of that, we basically have about the same top 10. I also have Patrick Mahomes at number 1. I have Aaron Rodgers at number 2. I have my guy Josh Allen at number 3. I love Josh Allen. Love what he did last year. He took huge steps. I mean, there were people coming out that really didn't give him a chance to become anything in the NFL. They were calling him a bust right away.
Definitely wasn't me.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
And so he took huge steps last year. I think kind of showed, he was in the MVP race up until the end. And so I think he kind of showed people what he was. Russell Wilson is obviously Russell Wilson. We see him twice a year. We know he's about. At 5, I have Tom Brady. I mean, what he did last year what is he now? 40 years old?
No, he's gonna be 44, bro.
How old is this guy? When is he gonna stop? What he's doing, before this year, I think people just kind of paired him and Belichick together as kind of one, and he went on his own, took a franchise that really hasn't done anything since they last won the Super Bowl, and in his first year, he takes him to the Super Bowl, and so I have him at 5. Deshaun Watson, I have him at 6, and again, that's if he plays. I have Matthew Stafford at 7. There's some Rams fans that say, "Oh, Matthew Stafford isn't a top 10 quarterback." Matthew Stafford's a top 10 quarterback, and he's a top 10 quarterback and possibly a top 5 talent. So, the Rams will be happy to get this guy at 8. Like you, I have Dak Prescott. At 9, I have Justin Herbert, and then this one's my surprise. I don't have Lamar Jackson in my top 10. I actually have Ryan Tannehill.
Okay.
I think what Tannehill's done in Tennessee is when Tannehill was in Miami, people kind of wrote him off as kind of a bust as well. And what he's done in Miami, he's been very efficient, and really been a reason for their playoff runs the last couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Tannehill one. I like you giving credit because I feel bad for not giving him credit. I'd say Matt Ryan is, a name that should be mentioned as an honorable mention. But, it just was really between Herbert and Kyler at 10 for me. If this was fantasy, I think Kyler because of, the running. But if we're talking like we are right now, just strictly who are the better players? And this is heading into 2021. That's the reason Brady's so low for me. I know people know that I And I'm not a believer that Tom Brady is my GOAT, so to speak, but it doesn't mean I don't think he's a top 3 all-time quarterback, and I respect his game. But I do feel like coming into 2021, he takes a little bit of a step back. I don't think the Bucs do, and I think that's why that they added Giovanni Bernard, because I think they're going to use him a ton out of the backfield, get Tom Brady away from any sort of contact with anybody. Anybody starts to rush him. You have Jamal Adams, who might end up being the highest paid safety in football. He just got offered, a record-breaking contract, so he'll probably take that. But when you have guys like that in that conference, you have to expect, you're going to get the blitz, you're going to get pressure. And so having guys like Bernard, having guys like Fournette, and, of course, Rojo, that's kind of my thought process there, is that I think they'll go more run heavy, dink and dunk to save Brady, but I also think they have the weapons all around him to keep him going. I just don't think he's going to have quite the season he did last year. But I mean, he could. And if he does, I'll totally give him credit for it. But that's why he fell a little bit in my rankings. The guy I want to bring up before we head into the running backs, Dak Prescott, because I still don't understand. Dalton Miller, who covers, he writes for PFN. He covers the Cowboys, friend of mine. He just put up a post on Twitter. I just saw it not too long ago, basically saying I can't talk football with people that think, like in 2021, that Dak Prescott is average. And I see this so much. Blaine, why do you think he has that average stigma around him? Because he's far from average and was on pace for over 6,000 yards and clearly an MVP candidate before he got hurt.
Yeah, I mean, I think let's look at it from a Rams fan standpoint. Like, Jared Goff's first year, he goes 0-7 and is just this. He plays. Let's just tell how it is. Jared Goff was absolutely terrible in his rookie year. I mean, he showed flashes, but he was absolutely terrible, and then a lot of that wasn't his fault. But I mean, let's look at Dak Prescott. I mean, he's this 4th round pick. He comes out and he's really like carried by Zeke Elliott. The run game. He has this great offensive line. He has these great. He has these really good wide receivers. He comes out. He has Des Bryant. They add Amari Cooper. They have one of the all-time great tight ends in Jason Witten. Like, he has all this help, and I think initially Dak Prescott kind of struggled with his accuracy a little bit, but and he doesn't really have that arm strength that some of the top guys have. But Dak Prescott, if he's mobile, he can escape the pocket. He has that intermediate short accuracy to his game. He can understand defenses. He's really improved his game from early in his career. And I think the people that don't watch the Cowboys kind of still see him as that guy that Prescott was early in his career. And he's not that player anymore. He's just top 10 quarterback.
I see my guy JT in here. He says it's 2 things with Dak: great situation, and he hasn't won anything meaningful. That I understand, but really, when you think about it, Tony Romo didn't win anything meaningful. And had Tony Romo been on a different team, I think Tony Romo would have had an opportunity to win Super Bowls and potentially go to the Hall of Fame. He's a very talented quarterback. You can go back to games where he threw 6 touchdowns, the defense gave up 7. So I think that followed Dak, and we saw it last year. Right when you thought that they had a defense, all of a sudden, a year turns around and they don't have a defense anymore. They don't have a secondary. They didn't bring back Byron Jones, and you saw that. So I'm really curious to see, what Dan Quinn does with this defense this year. That's going to be huge for Dak as far as trying to win this division. I don't think they win the division, but he was absolutely on pace for over 6,000 yards, and he was just. I thought he was phenomenal before he got hurt. So. And don't get me wrong, he's got the weapons, but who doesn't have weapons? That's a great, quarterback at this point. I mean, Stafford's got plenty of weapons. You can look at Tom Brady. He's got plenty of weapons. They're all over the place, right? Rodgers, now, Rodgers doesn't have plenty, but he's got a good amount of weapons. Having, maybe the best wide receiver in football helps. Tannehill, Ryan. We can name them all. But, I just think that the knocks on Dak are really fair. If what JT said is accurate, absolutely, about not winning anything meaningful. Well,
that's also the argument. That's the argument of Stafford too. Like,
yeah,
Stafford doesn't want anything. Well, Stafford's one guy on his. Like, do you want Stafford to go out and play defense too? Like, he can't help that the Dallas defense is giving up 30 points a game. Like,
That exactly my point. So it's like, I remember, what was it? The game against Cleveland, they lost 41-39. I mean, they should have won that game. They absolutely should have won that game. And, Cleveland came storming back at the end. The defense couldn't hold them. So, yeah, I mean, that's what I'll say on that. I think Dak is still severely underrated. Matthew Stafford's also severely underrated by some, because now everyone's like, oh, he's overrated. He went to the Rams and everyone's acting like all of a sudden he's this quarterback that he's not. Dave Kluge came on earlier in the week. He said it best. Over the last 10 years, Stafford's the best deep ball thrower in the game. He's the most accurate. So, I mean, Stafford has already shown that part of his game. The Rams have been lacking the deep ball. So now you look at what the Rams accomplished without that deep ball. Now that they'll have that with Stafford, and they'll have that manipulation of the pocket. I don't understand. So those two on that list are extremely underrated to me. Deshaun Watson is the outlier here because he might not play. So I don't know how your dog felt about that, but I guess I can't mention Deshaun Watson ever again. Okay, we'll move on to the running backs here. And I'll start off. Number 1, I have Saquon Barkley. I do think he's still the best running back in football. Look, he doesn't have the production of a Christian McCaffrey, of Alvin Kamara, who's on pace to have more receiving yards and receptions than Marshall Faulk at the running back position. Derrick Henry, he's not as productive, but I just think when you look at a talent like Saquon coming into this year, as long as things check out, keep in mind, I made this before we went on to the the PUP list. But I do think he's going to play week 1. I just think they're being extra cautious. When I look at his talent, I look at what he brings to the table. He does everything. He can pass protect. He can obviously run the ball in between the tackles. He can run outside zone. And then you look at his ability in the receiving game. And I mean, let's be honest here. He's very similar to Todd Gurley in his prime with the Rams. A guy that's able to hurdle standing corners, not even guys that are diving, literally just hurdle over standing corners. Super athlete. His quads are just absolutely enormous. But that's besides the fact that I think he's the best running back in football. Then you have Derrick Henry, who he's the best workhorse in football, I think. Christian McCaffrey. The injuries have, started to concern me with McCaffrey because while, Saquon had that really nasty injury, that was one instance. You've seen Christian McCaffrey get dinged up a little bit, and so I'm a little worried about that. But he comes at 3. Alvin Kamara is just an absolute freak of nature. Had 6 touchdowns in a game last year. People do not realize that. A lot of people do. Not everyone does. Alvin Kamara is on that elite status just with the ball. And then you have Dalvin Cook coming in, at 5 for me. Nick Chubb at 6. Aaron Jones at 7. Chris Carson, super, super underrated back. I saw he was RB20 by one of those graphics that came up on my feed. Jonathan Taylor at 9. And I had Cam Akers at 10 coming into the season because let's call it like it is. Cam Akers, the momentum was there. I mean, we're not going to sit here, you and I, because we agree. We're not going to sit here and say that Cam Akers was better than Darrell Henderson throughout the whole season last year, because that's just not true. But what was the case is that what Cam Akers found in the postseason when the Rams really needed him, he came through, and that was all on a bum ankle, if you want to call it that. So, what he was able to do against Green Bay and Seattle gave the Rams an opportunity to potentially move on to the next round and play Tampa. For me, Cam Akers being in the top 10 going into the year made sense. I didn't change it because I think it's fair to keep him there and show you that that's where I had him. If I had to change it real quick, that would be really difficult for me because, I mean, I think you can make a argument that Henderson would have that chance. I think Kareem Hunt would be in that conversation, but I haven't really gone over that because I wanted to keep Akers there, kind of showing you where I feel like his season could have been.
All right, Jake. Let me just confirm a couple of things. Yeah. Did you have Zeke Elliott in your top 10?
Nope.
Aaron Jones?
Yes.
Okay, you did. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we have a lot of the same. We have 3 different guys. Only Dalvin Cook was one in the same spot. One thing on Akers, that one surprises me a little bit. If you he had a really good postseason against Seattle and Green Bay, but his one big breakout game against New England had the worst run defense in football last year. I think he was. I mean, I think he was set up for big things this year too. But I think he was more of a top 15 guy coming into the year, maybe top 17, 18. Number one for me, I have Derrick Henry. He's the best running back in football right now. He reminds me of like Steven Jackson, but like Steven Jackson on another level, kind of like just plows through the modern undersized linebackers. Like you can't bring him down. He is the Tennessee Titans offense. And I don't think you can say that about many of these running backs where they are their team's offense in a passing league. So that for me kind of separates Henry from these other guys. McCaffrey for me is number 2. I have Nick Chubb at number 3. Number 4, I have Saquon Barkley. The reason I'm a huge Saquon guy, but I couldn't put him at number 1 last year. Like he did have the injury, but in his 19 carries, he averaged 1.8 yards per carry. Like that wasn't that he needs to go back to what he needs to find is that the form that he had in his rookie and second year. He needs to find that again. And if he does that, then I'm more than happy to put him at number 1. At 5, I have Dalvin Cook. 6, Alvin Kamara. At number 7, I think he's kind of taken a step back because the Cowboys have kind of ran him into the ground a little bit. But I have Ezekiel Elliott at 7. At 8, I have Aaron Jones, and then 2 guys here that might surprise you. At number 9, I have Antonio Gibson. I think he's ready for that next step.
Oh, okay.
I absolutely love him this year. He showed some great things. He showed some great things last year. I think he's ready to take a huge step in year 2. And then at number 10, I have David Montgomery. I think David Montgomery kind of has that I don't want to say bust label, but I think he has that kind of that jag label where he's just like. People see him as just not a running back, just a guy. And last year, when Tariq Cohen went down, he took that Bears offense, and I think he showed some things that he can build on going into this year.
Yeah, you know what? I'm just going to say it right now because Cam got hurt. I would change it. I'd put Najee Harris at number 10 because I really do think 100% he's going to come into the league and he's going to be a superstar. And you could take that to the bank. I think the Steelers got their best playmaker right off the bat. I think he's going to be more dynamic than Juju Smith-Schuster, Deontay Johnson, who I really like, James Washington, Chase Claypool, Pat Freiermuth, you name it. I mean, I really, really do think that he's going to be transcendent for the Steelers. I cannot wait to see him against the Broncos because I'm going to a Steelers-Broncos game. Cannot wait to see him in person. I know people will be like, you like Alabama. That's why you're saying that. I'm telling you, man, Najee Harris is going to explode. And I just decided to go against my no rookies in the top 10. And I just decided to throw him in there because I think he is just going to be amazing.
I think the one thing that concerns me with him is just that Steelers offensive line took a huge step back going into this year. So that worries me. I think he's a guy that can definitely create on his own. So, he can certainly have a big rookie year, but the offensive line really worries me. And then kind of just go back to David Montgomery again, like, throughout his career that they've had Mitchell Trubisky at quarterback, they probably won't start with Fields right coming in right out of the gate, but once Fields starts, I could see that opening up a lot of good things in the run game for a guy like David Montgomery, and I could see that Bears offense being a really strong running team going once Fields takes over eventually. Hopefully not week 1.
Yeah, and a guy that I totally forgot to mention as well that totally deserves an honorable mention is Austin Eckler. Not just a fantasy guy, but he could do a little bit of everything. Reminds me a little bit of the former muscle hamster Doug Martin. You saw what Martin did early on in his career and how he kind of fell off. I think he can do that, but a little bit more. So I really do like Eckler. I think he deserves some mention. And then another guy that I would say deserves some mention is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I don't think we're giving him enough, opportunity here. This is somebody that early on in the season when he was the guy and he wasn't hurt, was showing you that he was the best running back coming out of his draft. I mean, he was way ahead of Jonathan Taylor early on. He was way ahead of Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, you name it, he was ahead of him. And then he got hurt. And then they brought in Le'Veon Bell. And then they really went this kind of running back by committee approach. So, I mean, in CEH, man, I'm a big fan of him. There's a lot of good running backs in this league. We didn't even mention Josh Jacobs. Hell, I'll even say, Chase Edmonds, give him an opportunity, give him the bulk of the carries and see what he can do. and even Kenyon Drake, who's with Jacobs. So there's this is a really good running back league right now. There's a lot of running backs, and that probably explains why guys like Adrian Peterson and Todd Gurley that have shown you they can still find the end zone and nearly had 700 yards apiece. They can't find homes, and I think a lot of that has to do with that. I think, a lot of these players, there's a lot of talent here, and it's becoming more of a running back by committee league. Each year we're losing bell cows, and I mean, that's just another reason. So we'll move into the wide receivers. I have Devonte Adams number 1. I don't know if I can say for the Green Bay Packers anymore, because it sounds like he might play somewhere else. I mean, I don't know if you saw Zadarius Smith saying he needs a realtor in Green Bay ASAP. Yeah. I don't know what's going on there, man, but it doesn't sound like they're in a good place right now. So, I'm sorry, Jake Shavink. I know you're out there. Not trying to make fun of your Packers. It's a tough time right now for you. But, Devonte Adams, to me, best receiver in the league. Footwork is great. He's not the fastest receiver. Doesn't have to be the fastest receiver. I think he's the most precise route runner in football. I don't think he's the best, though. I do think that's Keenan Allen. I'll talk about him in a little bit. But I think Devonte Adams is absolutely up there as one of the best. And what he does, going up and high pointing the football, the way he can finish through contact, obviously running after the catch. There's only 2 guys ahead of him, yards after the catch, Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods over the last 2 years. I mean, Devonte Adams has been a freak, so he's number 1 for me. Number 2 is Tyreek Hill, a guy that can absolutely change the game. He has an argument to be number 1. I really mulled putting him at 1, and it's funny, the year prior, I couldn't really take him seriously as a top receiver, but when you look at him, he really moves all over the offense. He can play on the outside. He's proven that. He can play on the inside. He's just a freak. So he's number 2. Julio Jones is number 3 for me. Just Julio Jones has been so, competitive, and, he's stayed around for a bit. This is somebody that I think, at least in my opinion, Julio Jones is one of the most complete wide receivers we've seen. He's going to, be somebody that is going to give you consistent production. And now he goes to the Titans. He's got just as good of a quarterback. I'd say Ryan and Tannehill, kind of funny there, are kind of on the same tier right now. So that's where I have Julio Jones. DeAndre Hopkins is number 4. He was number 1 for me initially, but I really think about it. I think Hopkins is absolutely up there, but he's also a huge target hog. And so I feel like that kind of manipulates everything, looking at Julio and Tyreek and Devontae. So I have him at 4 on my list. Number 5, I have Keenan Allen. I think Keenan Allen is an absolute stud. He's become one of my favorite receivers in football. He's not the fastest, but the one thing Keenan Allen does well is he runs routes. He manipulates guys off the line of scrimmage, and it's so fun to watch. Keenan Allen is an absolute stud. He comes in at 5 for me. Number 6 is more of a projection than kind of where I feel like he is, where I think he could be early on in the season, where he'll mold into, and that is DK Metcalf. We saw Metcalf and kind of the inexperience and being more of a younger player, begging for targets. He actually, I'm not going to say he's the one that threw the interception to Darius Williams and cost his team in the playoffs, but his desire to get the ball and make a big scene about it forced their hand to give it to him. It could have led to that pick 6 to Darius Williams in the playoffs that ultimately cost him that game, or, kind of led to that. Number 7, Allen Robinson. Look at the receiver that leads the league in contested catches over the last few years. That's Allen Robinson. He's got over 80 plus. So he is absolutely up there. And man, Justin Fields, that's the receiver you want to have. Number 8 is Mike Evans. I mean, what can you say about Mike Evans? The dude just consistently goes over 1,000 yards and has 10 plus touchdowns, or close to 10 every single year. Number 9 is AJ Brown. AJ Brown, I honestly argued about putting up at 6 and swapping DK Metcalf, because Metcalf's physical, attributes, I don't know necessarily mean that he's a better receiver than Brown. Right now, AJ Brown might be better, but projection wise going into 2021, I had DK Metcalf because I think over time it's really going to just click, and Metcalf has a chance to be the best in the league. And then wrapping up in my top 10, Stephon Diggs. I know there are Rams fans out there that would argue Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. I would tell you respectfully, because I absolutely love them. And Robert Woods is one of my absolute favorite Players, I've met him in person. I love him. But the fact of the matter is that we talked about how deep the running backs are. The wide receivers are 40 deep, man. There's about 40 starting caliber receivers right now, maybe even more than that. It's so impressive. I don't even know where I would put, Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods. I think I might have put them like top 30, top 20, maybe. I think it was more close to top 30, but it is just such a tough one there. And keep in mind, I didn't even mention Justin Jefferson, who is right outside of that for me, or DJ Moore. But Stephon Diggs, look, I've been a huge Adam Thielen is better than Stephon Diggs, person here, fan club. And I'll tell you, Diggs reached another level. That wasn't Diggs from Minnesota. Diggs got better with Josh Allen. That was a completely different receiver, and I think you saw that. So those are my top 10, Blaine. If you'd like me to repeat, because I know you had to go check on something, I can definitely do that for you.
I got you guys, Jake. Thank you.
All right, cool.
So our top two are the same. I have Devonte Adams at 1. He was the one guy that I don't want to say he gave Jalen Ramsey trouble, but I think he was the one guy that really gave him a natural competition. We'll say he's the best guy in football, I think. And then in number 2, you could argue him at number 1, but Tyreek Hill for me is number 2 as well. And number 3, I have 3 and 4 switched. I have DeAndre Hopkins at number 3. He's a playmaker. He can make a case for the best receiver in football too. Last year against Buffalo, when Arizona needs a guy to make a play, Kyler Murray hauls up a Hail Mary to no one, and DeAndre Hopkins is there to muscle it away and score the game-winning touchdown.
It's crazy.
So for me, he's at 3. At 4, I have Julio Jones. I think going into the later parts of his career, I think he's going to deal with injuries a little bit. I could see him starting to fall off, but when he's healthy, he's dominant. He's not a guy you want to see 100%, because I think a couple of years ago he showed that he can take over games. And then at 5, I have Stephon Diggs. Like you said, he went on another level last year. I think in Minnesota he was really brought down by that offense, and that being a run first offense. And I don't think Kirk Cousins is bad, but he's not Josh Allen. So I love Stephon Diggs at number 6. I think like you said, he can be the best wide receiver in football here in the next year or two, and that's DK Metcalf. I think he showed flashes last year of it, and he was only a rookie. So going into this year and moving forward, he's going to learn from his mistakes. He's going to get stronger mentally. I think if he can get better up here, he's going to be really good. AJ Brown. The Titans might have the best wide receiver duo in football right now between Julio Jones and AJ Brown. I also gave Keenan Allen some love. At number 9, I have Justin Jefferson. I think he's only going to get better. He showed some really, really good things as a rookie, and honestly could break into the top 5 here in the next year or two. And then number 10 might be the one surprise. He's the best slot receiver in football, really. Got second team All-Pro last year for a reason, and that's Cole Beasley. The Bills put a lot of emphasis on the slot receiver position, and Cole Beasley kind of took that and ran with it last year in Buffalo. He was kind of just seen, I think, as a kind of a poor man's Wes Welker, a poor man's Julian Edelman, but when he was in Dallas. But last year in Buffalo, when Josh Allen took that next step, and when Stephon Diggs came in and kind of take some pressure off him, Cole Beasley was one of the best slot receivers last year. So I had to put him in my top 10.
So I totally forgot about. Well, I didn't forget about him. He is an honorable mention for me. That's Calvin Ridley. Jake, you're absolutely right. And, for me, I think one more year of his, because he went from 800 to 1,500 yards last year. I might be overdoing it, but he had a monster season last year. As long as that production continues, he'll move up the ranks there. And then I think you pissed off JT Olsen because he is really upset that Mike Evans isn't in your top 10.
Mike Evans just isn't consistent enough for me. He's very up and down. He'll disappear for games at a time. And I think injury issues are part of his problem too. So Mike Evans is obviously one of the more physical like talented, physically talented wide receivers in the game, but he's like he'd be one of my honorable mention guys. He was somebody I really considered putting in there, but he'd be in that kind of 11 to 13 range for me.
So I'm going to do honorable mention here. I'm going to mention, well, first off, I'll mention Calvin Ridley. Yeah, I agree. I think that, Mike Evans has been very consistent over the years with his 1,000 yards but I understand what you're saying, Blaine, because you say he's off certain games. And so it ends up, when you put it all together with a bow, it looks great at the end of the year. But you're saying if I want a guy that consistently goes for 80 yards, he's not that guy.
Yeah.
I get that. Actually, it's funny. That's actually Robert Woods in a sense. But no, honorable mentions, I'm going to say Calvin Ridley. I'm going to say, keep an eye on Jamar Chase this season with Cincinnati. I'm going to say Tyler Boyd deserves an honorable mention. Keep in mind, like going into 2021, I think, Chase Claypool, I think deserves a mention. I mean, we saw what he did last year. Tyler Lockett, 100%. I mean, that dude is so consistent, and he's such a good route runner, always open. And he's never dropped a red zone pass from Russell Wilson. So I would definitely say him. And I'm sure I'm missing guys, but, those are guys that come to my mind. Cortland Sutton going into this year, coming off the torn ACL. I'm curious to see how he does. I'm a big fan of his game. And then the Dallas trio. I mean, we got to talk about, CeeDee Lamb, Cooper and Gallup. I definitely am curious to see where they go with that. So, yeah, I mean, just some names to throw out there for sure. But we're going to move into the tight end position. And I'm going to start off. Number 1, I have George Kittle. When you look at what George Kittle can be, obviously, I think Travis Kelce has been more reliable as far as the injuries. But going into this year, I just think Kittle is the best blocking tight end I've ever seen. He is such a monster. And for me, I think that just barely puts him a tick ahead of Kelce. But when people get upset, how do you have Kelce over Kittle? How do you have Kittle over Kelce? How do you have Darren Waller over those two? Like, I think those three are all in their own tier. And that's the thing that I think gets lost on people. So I have Kittle at 1, Kelce at 2, Waller at 3. Then I have TJ Hawkinson going into 2021 at 4. I'm expecting a huge leap. I'm expecting Jared Goff to use him a ton. Early on in Jared Goff's Rams career, he was using guys like Lance Kendricks. He was using guys like Tyler Higbee. And I expect him to do the same as he gets comfortable with this offense. And let's be honest here, TJ Hawkinson can stay on the field because the man can block too. Number 5, Mark Andrews. I think he's going to be in for his best season this year with Lamar Jackson. Number 6, I have Dallas Goedert. Now, this might shock some people. Fantasy-wise, I'm not saying go out and get Dallas Goedert on your fantasy team. But when you look at what he does on film, he's a super well put-together tight end. And that is why when you see all this stuff about Zach Ertz, will he stay with this team? Will he not? The reason he's become expendable is because Dallas Goedert is a freaking awesome tight end. I mean, let's just call it like it is. Well-rounded, does a little bit of everything super well. Number 7 is still Rob Gronkowski. You got to keep him in the top 10 because he's still producing. I don't care if he's with Tom Brady. He's still producing. I can't penalize him because he's with Tom Brady. Number 8, Mike Gesicki. I'm expecting him to take that next step. I thought he was very impressive last year with Ryan Fitzpatrick. As long as Tua Tagovailoa continues to develop and stays healthy, I think they can really develop a nice rapport there. And then I have number 9, Jonnu Smith. I think Jonnu Smith is awesome. And the problem with him was, were injuries. I mean, let's be real here in Tennessee. But one thing that's interesting is that Jonnu Smith doesn't get enough credit for his ability as a blocker. A lot of those plays last year, when you saw Ferkser catching touchdowns and what have you, they had Jonnu Smith blocking. I mean, this is somebody that they trust to block. So now he comes to New England, and the fact that he can do a little bit of everything, they're going to be able to use him and Hunter Henry well. And then 10, man, it's so hard because I honestly kind of want to put Gerald Everett here with the Seahawks. I think Gerald Everett's going to have a monster season in Seattle because basically every Seattle Seahawk tight end has had good seasons, and I think he's the most talented. He averaged the most yards of separation of any tight end in the league last year. Jared Goff just couldn't get him the football. Tyler Higbee is certainly here. I honestly, Irv Smith is a guy that I'm even considering here. I think Irv Smith is somebody to watch. I'm going to stick with Tyler Higbee because I do think Tyler Higbee is better than advertised. And here's why. Tyler Higbee is probably not going to go for over 700 yards receiving. He's probably not going to be in competition with Kittle, Kelsey, and Waller. He doesn't have to be. What Tyler Higbee does well is he's gotten better as a blocker. He can get open. He is a physical tight end. He can make plays in the red zone. And the fact of the matter is this, the situation there, his stats won't be that great, right? But when you take Tyler Higbee and you put him on the Rams with Stafford and all of his weapons, and he amounts to 500 to 600 yards, that's like 1,000-yard season on like the Jaguars. So I guess that's kind of where I'm going with this. I do think he's better than advertised, and so I do think he deserves credit as the number 10 tight end. But I mean, Irv Smith, I think, is also in for a huge year, and so is Gerald Everett. They'll probably have better statistical outputs than Tyler Higbee, but I think Higbee is probably a more seasoned veteran and a better tight end. If you need to go with one for one game, to say you're going to the Super Bowl, you had to pick one. That's probably the one I'd go with.
Yeah, no, I like your list, Jake. We differ on a couple of guys, but for the most part, we have eight of our 10 are in the top 10. So I'll share my list now. Let's see. Our top 2 are flipped. I have Travis Kelce at 1 and George Kittle at 2. I just think that Kelce is he's the catalyst for that Chiefs offense. When he doesn't play or when his game is off, it's pretty obvious. Mahomes is obviously Mahomes, but when Kelce's not at his best, that offense just isn't quite as good as it can be. Kittle, he's very good. I do think he needs to stay. He has dealt with injuries, so that's why I don't think he's number 1 like Kelce is. Waller, the story of his career is just kind of incredible to me. Just all his journey, what he's gone through, and now he's the 3rd best tight end in the league, and arguably the best receiver on that Raiders team. And number 4, I have TJ Hawkinson. I'm excited to see how Jared Goff uses him because they don't have a lot of wide receivers there in Detroit. So they have TJ Hawkinson and a bunch of guys. So Hawkinson really could be the featured receiver in that Lions offense. At number 5, I have someone that you didn't have on your list. I have Noah Fant. I think he showed some really promising stuff last year. And if Drew Lock can't succeed with Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, and Noah Fant, as well as all the other guys that they have in that receiving core, it's time for the Broncos to move on because Fant has all the potential. He showed some really good things last year, and I'm excited to see what he does this year. Number 6, I have Mark Andrews. Number 7, I have Jonnu Smith. I'm excited to see what he does in New England. They have a really good duo because right behind him, I have the other Patriots tight end, Hunter Henry. And then number 9, I have a 3rd former Patriots tight end this time. I have Rob Gronkowski. And then rounding out my top 10 will be the one instance maybe where my Rams fandom comes into play in this list. And I have Tyler Higbee right there.
Both put Tyler Higbee at 10.
I like, and it's not that he's like, I don't think it's that far fetched to put him there. Yes, no, he doesn't have the best numbers, but when you look deeper in those numbers and look at the analytics and look what he does on film, like, he is right there at the top 10 guys, and we've seen what he can do when he is a featured guy. I mean, look at the end of 2019 where he went off. And this year, the Rams don't have a lot of tight end. They have Tyler Higbee, Johnny Munz, like he's a blocking tight end, and then they have 2 unproven guys in Jacob Harris and Bryson Hopkins. Yeah, Bryson Hopkins. I get him and Perkins mixed up all the time. So I just think he's a tight end. He's arguably the 3rd receiver, the 3rd option in this Rams offense. So I think putting Stafford in at quarterback could really give him a boost.
Yeah, and I'll give kind of as we were talking about that, some names kind of creep through my mind. I mean, I really do think Irv Smith could be in for a monster season. Can't stress that enough. Really interesting to see how the Giants use Evan Ingram and Kyle Rudolph. I think Kyle Rudolph was really underrated, his impact he had on the Vikings, especially in the red zone. Somebody there. But a guy that you didn't mention that I thought that you might, Cole Kmet. I think he being the number 1 tight end taken off the board last year in the draft. I mean, I'm just confused why they brought back Jimmy Graham, who's 34 years old, and really, I mean, he's all right. But, to me, he's like another Jared Cook. I think Cole Kmet was finding his stride towards, down the stretch. And I don't really know why, they brought back Jimmy Graham. But if they give him the opportunity to grow with Justin Fields, I'm really excited for that tandem. Moving on, the offensive tackle position. I have number one. If this guy starts asking to leave, man, the Packers are going to have a problem. I have David Bakhtiari. Dude is an absolute stud. He's a stonewall. When he got hurt, they rallied around, Billy Turner and played good football, but it was not, pretty. Trent Williams is number two. I still don't feel like people realize Trent Williams also isn't that old. Like Whitworth is going to play. Is he 40 yet or close to 40? I mean, he's going to get there soon. Trent Williams is 34. So, I mean, he's not as old as people want to say. Garrett Bowles is number three. This could obviously be, kind of a shout out to Mike Munchak, the fact that he is the best offensive line coach in football. Just what he's been able to do, what it seems like overnight with Garrett Bowles, a guy that, was a first round pick, kind of a bust in a sense. And now all of a sudden we're talking about him as the third offensive tackle in the league. Number four is Teron Armstead. Dude is an absolute beast. He's great in the run game. That's a guy the Saints obviously are happy to have. Number five is the Andrew Whitworth. He is number five. Still has it. No matter what, even when we started to see a little bit of a decline, or thought we saw a little bit of a decline, he came back strong. I'm really excited to see him come back from this injury this year, because this is probably his last hurrah. So this could be one of his better years. Knowing that this could be it, you could get a better year out of him. Number six is not a left tackle. The other five were. Number six is the best right tackle in football. He would be on my USA Olympic team that I threw out there because PFF was asking about that. Tristan Wirfs with Buccaneers. To me, that was such a huge key piece for that team, that offense, to really find another level for them. It can help in so many ways. Comes from Iowa. He's my number one tackle coming out of the draft. I knew he was going to be that good. I mean, he's a special talent. He comes in at 6. Number 7 is DJ Humphries. What if I told you that DJ Humphries might be the most underrated offensive tackle? Because people don't even realize what he's doing in Arizona. He's actually turned himself into an absolute stud, and that's a good thing for Arizona for sure. It's going to help them moving forward. Humphries comes in at 7. Number 8 is Laramie Tunsil. I think it's hilarious how he's made his trade like a joke. He's like, I want a statue, and all that. Look, Tunsil is legit. And there's a reason why all those picks were traded away to acquire him. Because at one point or another, I don't feel like Houston had the worst idea of going out and getting Tunsil to protect a guy in Deshaun Watson that has had a few injuries, major injury. But unfortunately, it backfired because right now we don't know what's going on with Watson. There's all sorts of turmoil that happened since then. But he's still a top 10 tackle for me. Number 9 is Ronnie Stanley. Look at the Baltimore Ravens when Ronnie Stanley went down. Everyone talks about how well Orlando Brown played, but I look at the fact that Orlando Brown, shifted over from right to left, and he did not want to play right again, so he moved over to the Chiefs. But it's not even about Orlando Brown's play. When you had him off the field, that was that was a huge loss, and it really hurt them, I thought. He comes in at 9. And then finally, a guy who's been the best right tackle in football for a long time, who I finally had somebody pass, Lane Johnson. I mean, it's been suspensions and injuries with him, but he's still a monster, and he's so smart. It sounds funny because I just said suspensions and I just said smart after that. But I mean, he really is a very intelligent football player. Had a chance to watch an interview of his, with the Offensive Line U or Offensive Line Academy or whatever, and just listening to him talk about, how he knows different players' tendencies and, picking apart different things. Just a very, very smart player. I think he's underrated, even still. And so I have him at 10 to wrap up that list.
Yeah, there's some guys in there that I miss, Jake, but and Lane Johnson is one of them. He was a guy that I considered and just missed out on my list. Our top 2 are exactly the same. David Bakhtiari is number 1 for me, and then Trent Williams follows him at number 2. If Bakhtiari is healthy, there's a good chance that maybe the Packers are playing in the Super Bowl instead of Tampa Bay. I think his loss in the playoffs really affected what what the Packers and Aaron Rodgers were able to do. I mean, Rodgers was absolutely harassed by the Buccaneers pass rushers in that playoff game. I have Ryan Ramczyk at number 3, Tristan Wirfs at number 4. Like I think you mentioned his importance. I mean, the Bucs draft him last year, and he might have been their best acquisition outside of Tom Brady. I mean, when you sign a guy like Tom Brady, you need tackles on the outside that are going to be able to protect him, because Tom Brady's not running away from anybody. So you need tackles that are going to be able to protect him, and Tristan Wirfs was a big part of that last year. It was a huge addition for them. Teron Armstead is at number 5, and then I have Ronnie Stanley at 6. Andrew Whitworth at 7. He's a guy that, a lot of people maybe don't talk about anymore because he's older, but he's one of the best left tackles in the game. And just watching what he does and what effect he has on the Rams offensive line since he arrived in 2017 it's been fun to watch, and this might be it for him. And if it is, I'll wish him the best after retirement. Number 8, I also have Garrett Bowles. He like you said, he really turned his career around with Munchak, and he's turned into one of the premier tackles in the league. Number 9, I have Dwayne Brown. Russell Wilson gets harassed a lot, but Dwayne Brown typically is not the reason why. And then at number 10, I have Taylor Decker.
Oh, I like that. I was going to say Dwayne Brown and Taylor Decker are honorable mentions for me, as well as I'd say even Havenstein, because when he's fully healthy, when he's not playing hurt, Havenstein is a top 5 right tackle in football. It's just not very rare that, or it is very rare that he's fully healthy and not playing, because, I mean, Blaine, remember we heard, like, why did Rob Havenstein just take, like, his play took a nosedive? It's because, they came out at the end and they're like, yeah, he played hurt the entire year. Like, oh, yeah. Of course. All right, so let's move on to offensive guard. I have number 1, Quentin Nelson. I didn't think anybody would pass Zach Martin until he retired, because he's just such an absolute baller. But Quentin Nelson surpassed him. I mean, Quentin Nelson is not Aaron Donald, so to speak, but I think he's the closest thing to Aaron Donald on the offensive line. I mean, he really is. He has that, like, tenacity that Donald has, and he's the guy going from the opposite side. So when they run into each other, I don't even know what's going to happen. Number 2, Zach Martin. He's just been a consistent, he's been the most consistent guard, I think, in the league. Number 3 is Brandon Scherf. I was surprised that Washington kept him. So, I mean, obviously it's a good thing, but I'm definitely surprised. Wyatt Teller is a funny one. He comes in at 4 for me. Buffalo drafted this guy out of Virginia Tech, I want to say. I might have gotten that wrong. Watched him at the Senior Bowl. Wasn't overly impressed with him. And there were a lot of people buzzing about him. And I was like, I don't see it. And I had Rams fans even telling me while I was at the Senior Bowl, watch Wyatt Teller. And I was not impressed. The Bills gave up on him. He goes to the Browns and turns himself into an all-pro level talent. Wyatt Teller has turned into an absolute baller. He comes in at 4. Number 5 is Joel Bitonio, also on that same offensive line. Crazy offensive line for the Browns. He comes in at 5. Number 6 is Joe Thuney, who I cannot believe he is with the Chiefs. That is unreal. He's a very, very talented guard, and he comes in at 6. Number 7, Joe Thuney, former Patriot. This guy is a Patriot, 6th round pick out of Michigan. And no, it's not Tom Brady. It's Michael Onwenu, who was just absolutely phenomenal for them last year. Downtown Rams actually had the opportunity to have him on the show, and we were high on him, but we did not know he was going to ascend into the top 10 level at his position. We didn't even know he was going to start. I mean, you talk about a 6th round guard, but man, he has really just put together, a great, game going into the NFL. Number 8 is Ali Marpet. You talk about small school, success stories. Everybody brings up Ali Marpet. He's obviously been huge for the Buccaneers. And number 9 is Shaq Mason, sticking with the Patriots. It's important to give credit to Michael Onwenu, but not forget that Shaq Mason's been doing it for a while, and he's still pretty damn good at the position. And number 10 might be a little bit of a shock to people, but Chris Lindstrom for the Falcons. And look, the Falcons' offensive line is going to be a storyline this year, because if they, ascend to where I think that they can go, Matt Ryan, he loses Julio Jones, but insert Kyle Pitts. They still have plenty of weapons. Mike Davis can be your bell cow. I can't believe I'm saying that, but after what I saw last year, I'm definitely impressed with, his ability. It'll be very interesting with the Falcons. They lost a lot of close games last year. If their defense, finds their stride, they're really, really, sneaky team here that can, sneak into the 7th or 6th seed, in the NFC. And Chris Lindstrom is going to be absolutely huge for that offensive line. I have him come in at 10.
I like you mentioning guys like Chris Lindstrom, because he's the guy that just missed my list. Our top 3 are exactly the same. I have Quentin Nelson, Zach Martin, and Brandon Sheriff. I think those guys are the obvious top 3 guys. And like you said, Nelson's I think the closest you can get to Aaron Donald on the offensive side of the ball. He is incredible. And then Zach Martin, I loved him coming out of the draft. I remember, I think there was a story coming out.
Rams tried to get him too.
The Rams tried to trade over Zach Martin, and man, that would have been sweet. Then Brandon Sheriff, Washington did a great thing bringing him back because they're going to need him Sheriff on the inside, opening up holes for Antonio Gibson and protecting whoever they have back at quarterback. And number 4, I have Joel Bitonio. 5, Shaq Mason. 6 was the guy that I'm surprised you left him off your list. I have Roger Saffold at number 6.
Oh.
I miss him with the Rams so much, and he's taken that to Tennessee, and he's really helped beef up their offensive line to open up holes for Derrick Henry and to keep Ryan Tannehill healthy, because Tannehill's the guy that they have to protect. And while Derrick Henry could probably do a lot of things on his own because he's bigger than most everybody on the field, having guys like Saffold on the inside certainly helps. Number 7, I have Ali Marpet. 8, I have Wyatt Teller. 9, Joe Tooney, and then 10 is a guy that you didn't mention. That's Brandon Brooks. Guy that's kind of dealt with some health issues, but when he's playing, he's one of the elite guards in the league. And he's dealt with some anxiety stuff and other mental issues that have forced him to miss a couple games. But it's good for him to be able to recognize that and take time when he needs it. But when he's playing, he's arguably a top 5 guard in my opinion.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. Brandon Brooks is somebody I definitely like, and I considered it's just like you said, the injuries have been so brutal to him. If the football gods would just leave him the hell alone, man, he would be at the top. You look at his game, he's right up there with all of them. You mentioned Roger Saffold. He would be, honorable mention for me. I do feel like his play took a little bit, not a nosedive, but he's definitely fallen off a little bit on film, from his days with the Rams. Not a ton, but, a little noticeable. Didn't mention Taylor Lewan as a offensive tackle, honorable mention. Going to mention that now. But yeah, no, I think that the guard, we pretty much had everyone. You didn't mention Onwenu, I don't think.
No.
He really falls under the radar. I ask people, like, if you guys want to check these guys out, I don't know when NFL Game Pass is going to allow us to watch all 22 again. But when they do, you got to watch the Patriots, because Onwenu just did such a stellar job on that offensive line. It was truly incredible. To get that production out of a 6th rounder. I just thought it was funny. I'd make a Michigan 6th round pick joke. That wasn't Tom Brady. Let's move on to the centers here. Number 1, I have the guy that used to be the center for the Packers, because now everyone's leaving the Packers. He's heading over the Chargers. And this is not a move that anybody seems to be talking about, but I think is personally huge. Corey Linsley comes in at number 1 for me, followed by number 2, Frank Ragnow. He's probably my favorite center because he played with a broken throat. That dude literally is the G. Like, he is the GOAT for that reason. Come on now.
How do you break your throat?
I don't know how you do, but like I love it in a weird way. Yeah. Number 3 is JC Treader, who, guess what, came from the Packers and went to the Browns. Was a very big deal when they picked him up in free agency, and he's kind of like, muddied down a little bit. People don't talk about him. I get he's an offensive lineman, so that's probably part of it. But he's still really good. I have him at 3. Number 4, Brandon Linder, over in Jacksonville, does not get enough credit. Obviously it's not a really good bunch of guys around him, so I think he's just lost in the sauce, so to speak. Number 5, Rodney Hudson, who was with the Raiders. He is now with Arizona. Very curious to see how that goes. There. Number 6, Jason Kelsey. He's still got it. We cannot forget about Jason Kelsey because he's still a very, very talented center. Number 7, this is a guy that no one gives credit. The Titans center, Ben Jones, very, very underrated. He's been huge for Henry. Obviously, he's not carrying Henry, so to speak, but he's done a nice job blocking for him. Number 8 is Ryan Jensen, who's maybe the most like psychotic center I've ever watched. That dude is just an absolute beast. He may not be the best center, but he plays like he's the best center. He acts like he's the best center, and he's ruthless. And I love that mean streak that he has. Ryan Jensen of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Number 9 is going to be Eric McCoy from the Saints. I'm a fan of his game, and I know you wanted the Rams to grab him. And number 10, and this is tough for me because I wanted to have Elston Jenkins here. He wasn't a center last year, but he's going to be a center. But I'm going to go with Chase Roulier from Wyoming, was the center for Josh Allen at Wyoming. He's with Washington. I just think, Washington's done a really nice job of acquiring talent in all means of, the field. I mean, acquisition of players, whether it be trades or whether it be free agency or whether it be late in the draft. Roulier was a late pick, I believe. He might have even been undrafted. I don't exactly remember. But he's just been very, very good, very consistent for them. He comes in at 10 for me.
So our top 2, once again, are flipped. I have Frank Ragnow at number 1 and Corey Linsley at number 2. I just think Frank Ragnow, I just think he's the best center in the draft. I mean, when you look at, when the Rams when you look at the Rams trading Jared Goff to the Lions, I mean, you had fans that I was probably one of them. Oh my gosh, the Rams just sent Jared Goff to his death in Detroit. And meanwhile, they have Frank. It's actually not a terrible situation.
No.
They have Frank Ragnow center. They drafted Penei Sewell. I think we didn't talk about that. We didn't go in depth on the Lions wide receivers for obvious reasons, but I think they have some promising guys there. But when you look at what Jared Goff needs to succeed, he needs that structure up. Having that structure up front is crucial for him. That's where it starts. And then they have Anthony Lynn calling plays, and he's no bum either. So I really like what they have in Frank Ragnow. I think he'll be huge for Jared Goff. I think he's huge for a guy like DeAndre Swift in the run game as well. Corey Linsley, right there at number 2. I have J.C. Treader at. Sorry, I can't. Brooke is what? Yeah. How do you break your throat? J.C. Treader, I have at 3, like you. I also have Brandon Linder at 4. Number 5, I'm a little higher on this guy than you were. I have Eric McCoy up at 5. I think he's one of the premier centers in the league, and I will never, ever, 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 ever. That's like 5 evers. Forgive the Rams for trading back not once and not twice, but 3 times to not draft Eric McCoy and to take Taylor Rapp. Like I can't. And number 6, I have Chase Roulier. Number 7, Jason Kelce. Like you said, he's still got it. He may be getting up there in age, but he's still he's a guy that came in the league and was a guy that nobody really thought he would make it. And here he is. He's a consistent top 10 player. Number 8, I have Ronnie Hudson. Number 9, this might be my Rams fandom coming in here a little bit, but I think Austin Corbett has potential to be a top 10 center this year. I really do. Ever since he was traded from Cleveland to the Rams, he's really stepped up his game. He's one of the premier guards last year. So I think he'll be able to move inside at center. He'll have a veteran quarterback behind him, Matthew Stafford, and he'll be able to translate what he did at guard to being really the captain and being the centerpiece of the offensive line. And then wrapping up my top 10, I have Cody Whitehair.
Oh, that's a good name. I didn't even think about that. Shout out to Joe Chicatella, my old coworker. He's my guy, and I appreciate him throwing out Jake, you're the man. So, yeah. So I looked at your list here, and I mean, for the most part, I mean, I was a little surprised you didn't have Ryan Jensen, unless I'm deaf.
No, yeah, he just missed it.
Okay, you did have Ryan Jensen, and you didn't have Ronnie Hudson, right?
Ronnie Hudson, no, no, I did. I had him at 10-9. I had him 8.
Okay. I don't think it's crazy that Austin Corbett can crack the top 10 next year. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I have at number 9, so I would agree with that. I think that he's I mean, he hasn't played center since I think he.
Wait, you had him at 9?
Yeah, I had Austin Corbett at 9.
Oh, I totally missed that. You had Austin Corbett in your top 10.
Yes.
Oh wow, so you're very very high. Because I thought I was high on him. Okay, I've been like shouting from the rooftops, like the guys, you don't understand. You're not reacting enough. Like the Rams got the 33rd overall.
The Rams have in my opinion, the 9th best center, and you have some Rams fans wanting to start Coleman Shelton.
Oof. Or get Lamont Gaillard.
Yeah.
I don't know, but man, we did it. We went through each position. We'll be doing defense at some point, not tonight because that took an hour, literally an hour.
Yeah, but spoiler, Jake, Aaron Donald's my number 1 defensive lineman. Just so you know.
Yeah, sadly, I have to spoil and say Aaron Donald's mine as well. It was close though, you know. I mean, when you really think about it, there's so many players that no, I can't. Yeah, man, it'll be fun, chopping that up. Do you have any last thoughts that you want to throw out there before we call it a night?
I don't think so. I just this has been a fun exercise the last 2 years, and look forward to hopefully making it a third next year.
Yeah, man. It's I always enjoy doing this because what I think is really cool, and its association with Downtown Rams, is that we're doing this, and I've actually had viewers of ours and listeners of ours and readers of ours that just watch Rams football, so they're interested in this because they're like, I don't watch Titans football. I would never have known that Ben Jones is a good center, and I think that's the cool thing about this. That's why I like it so much.
Yeah, I think it kind of gives you a good feel for the landscape of the NFL too. I mean, like you said, like there are arguably 40 to 50 potential starting number 1 wide receivers in the league, and the running back position is also very deep, and teams are starting to use 2 guys, so just having 1 featured guy, and so I think you just kind of get a feel for the depth of some of these positions.
Yeah, no, absolutely, guys. Do you have any questions before we head out? We're gonna give you the floor real quick, but it has to be quick. I'm curious. And I don't know what delay we're on, Blaine, so I don't know how long this will take, but it shouldn't take too long. And then if nobody asks the question, we just sit there.
We just sit here in silence, play. Get the crickets sound effect going.
Just play the sound of silence. Jake, I appreciate you getting us through the off season. Thank you, Will. You too, Blaine. Guys, make sure you follow Blaine at BGrisakDTR. Let's get him to 1,000 followers and then to 1 million shortly after.
Let's start with 1,000, then we'll work on 1 million.
Yeah, but yeah, do that. If you're on Twitter, you can go follow him. I think your handle is right in the Downtown Rams. Yeah, it's right in the Downtown Rams bio. So you can just go right to Downtown Rams. All of our handles are mine, Alexis's, and Blaine's. So be sure to do that. We're going to have a Downtown Rams podcast soon. Alexis and I will be recording that very shortly. And Blaine is going to have all sorts of awesome content on the site. We're going to have all sorts of writers writing awesome content. We'll be doing the defensive players soon. But that's going to be it for us since it doesn't seem to be... Okay, I see here. Will, thoughts on trading maybe a 5th or something for Mark Ingram? I would pass.
I don't think you trade for Mark Ingram. I think I think he's an intriguing name. Don't get me wrong. He's a veteran guy I would look at, but I certainly wouldn't trade draft capital for him. I think he's honestly a guy that Houston could potentially cut once roster cutdowns come. The Rams are saying they don't want to. They're not going to sign anybody at the moment, and I don't think they are. I think that they're going to look at how their guys do during the preseason, and then once roster cutdowns happen, kind of get a feel for the landscape and see who other teams cut and go from there. Because I mean, as much as I love Adrian Peterson and what he's done in his career, he's a 36-year-old running back, and I mean he'd be a good veteran presence, a good number 2, but I just don't think any of the guys right now are exciting Sean McVay and Les Snead. So I think they're going to wait, and Ingram might be a guy that pops up for him.
Yeah, I think just kind of ending it. I would say, and I said this in my Todd Gurley video, you can go check out on my channel. Todd Gurley and company are not trying to sign a contract to get into training camp. They're trying absolutely not to do that. They're not trying to play any preseason games. These are guys that want to sign right before the season. They want to skip the line. They want to use the fast pass at, wherever, Disney World, Great Escape, whatever you want to call it. They're using that, fast pass, so to speak, in this analogy, this weird analogy, and they're skipping the training camp because they do not want to get hurt. When you look at these veterans, Adrian Peterson's 36-year-old. The last thing he wants to do is go to training camp and get a torn ACL or something. So I think these guys are waiting it out regardless of what the Rams are saying. For people saying that the Rams absolutely will not get Todd Gurley because the Rams view him not as a starter but more as a backup, that wouldn't deter the Rams. But Todd Gurley really holds all the cards, in my opinion, because I do think the Rams would consider bringing him back or an Adrian Peterson in. But it really is up to Todd Gurley. If he were willing to kind of put that in the past and everything, put that past him, then I think the Rams would consider, because what are you really losing? He'd be a cheap, ad. You wouldn't have to give up, trade capital, draft capital, whatever you want to call it. And the fact of the matter is this: we saw the same situation, very similar, when the Rams relied on in-house with Sean McVay at head coach and, of course, Les Snead as the GM. We saw Todd Gurley get hurt, and so they decided to stick with John Kelly, a late-round pick, like, you could talk about, Calais and Funk, and they went with the UDFA and Justin Davis, and they were so bad, the Rams signed C.J. Anderson off the couch. So I'm not going to lie. I really like Xavier Jones. I like the other guys that they have, but let's be real here. There's only been one guy in that running back room that's taken a snap in the NFL, or, at least, as a running back on an offense, and that is Darrell Henderson. So I won't be shocked if the Rams sign a Todd Gurley, they sign an Adrian Peterson, maybe even Alfred Morris, which is somebody that you mentioned in your article with that familiarity with Sean McVay.
Yeah, definitely. Alfred Morris is somebody that really kind of intrigues me, given his familiarity with Sean McVay. He's been that guy that's kind of come in for teams. He's been that guy for Dallas. He was that guy for the New York Giants last year, and I think that familiarity with McVay, he's a guy that could come in literally like 2 days before week 1 if he wanted to, and be able to play that week.
Yeah, and I know people are asking me, what about Duke Johnson? Not in this comment section, but I'd probably say I'm the worst person to ask about Duke Johnson because he's burned me in every single fantasy league I've ever had him in. But, in more of an unbiased scenario here, Duke Johnson doesn't make any sense at all because he doesn't offer anything that they don't already have on the roster. He's way too similar to Darrell Henderson, but doesn't provide anything near what Henderson provides as far as running in between the tackles and as far as pass protection. So he wouldn't make any sense to me. I think they'd go out and get a big-bodied guy. Maybe they get a Bo Scarborough just as a big-bodied, a guy that could be in that rotation. He's had some success in this league with the Lions. He had bell cow opportunities. So, that guy might be an option. But really, I don't think it's a huge deal regardless. I think Darrell Henderson's the guy. People that are really against Todd Gurley, being the running back, they're worried about him for the wrong reasons. No, he's not going to disrupt the entire team chemistry. No, he's not going to take all the carries away from whoever is number one, which will be Darrell Henderson. And no, he's not going to cost a lot, because the fact of the matter is, if you're a free agent right before the season, and it's not just, the fact is, like, it's not like an Xavier Howard type of situation where, say, he were to demand a trade or something like that, and then they just outright released him, like something crazy like that. Like, pretty much any free agent, as long as they're not like abruptly released and they're superstars, they're going to be cheap. I mean, they know that. That's the run. Like, they run the risk by waiting, towards the end of training camp and preseason to be signed. They know that. So Todd Gurley is going to be a cheap signing. He's not going to cost much for the Rams. They could absolutely afford him. I see. What about a trade for James Robinson? Interesting. Love the guy. Blaine was on him before anybody. I mean, Blaine wanted the Rams to draft him, had him in his mock draft in the 7th round, I believe, if I'm not mistaken there. And then didn't pick him in Dynasty. Sorry, I had to give you some burn there. 10 rounds and you didn't pick him in Dynasty. Yeah. Regardless, though, I don't think the Jaguars are trying to get rid of James Robinson. I think what we need to keep in mind is that just because it seems right for us, you know, when you think, oh, well, they got a first round running back and James Robinson, like that's not a guarantee. I've seen people talk about Kareem Hunt. I'll tell you right now, the Browns want to keep Hunt long term. They see what they have in Chubb and Kareem Hunt, and they want to keep that going. They don't want to get rid of it. So I don't think the Rams would trade for that. I saw earlier today someone mentioned Latavius Murray. I don't see how Murray offers anything that, you know, they don't already have on the roster. Maybe like he's a little bit different, you know, body composition and everything, but I just don't really see why they would give up Van Jefferson to get him in like a third round pick. I don't get that. So out of all the trades, I would say if Sony Michel was fully healthy and the Patriots were done with him, a late pick for Sony Michel I might consider, but I don't really see the point of trading any draft capital when you can sign Gurley or Peterson or Alfred Morris.
No, yeah, I know. I'm the same way. And I mean, you see guys like James Robinson who come in and as undrafted free agents, and guys that, you know, CJ Anderson a couple of years coming off the street and have success. Running back, I'm definitely not in the running backs don't matter camp by any means. But as far as running backs being able to come in and have success on an offense right away, like I don't think it's a position you need to be giving up future draft capital for by any stretch. And the fact of the matter is, like, you have Darrell Henderson. Like, I don't know why somebody just Rams fans don't want to give him this chance to show that he's capable of taking advantage of this opportunity and showing that he can be the guy.
Yeah, and the whole, well, we have Jake Funk, so everything's like Jake Funk wasn't drafted to be that guy. Jake Funk was drafted as a special teamer, and he's got some really good measurables, but I just think people are looking more so at the meme and like his name, and it's not a discredit to Jake Funk himself. I mean, it's incredible. He was drafted. I had a 6th round grade on him. So, I mean, he was drafted, you know, a little bit below where I had him, but I think the idea that he's going to come in and be a guy ahead of Henderson, I just think is just not, you know, reality. So that's it for us. Hope you guys, oh, sorry, Will, you got one last question. I'm capping it here. Do you think Xavier Jones will play a lot in preseason, or will they want to preserve him now? Maybe. So I think they're going to just run rampant in preseason as long as it's not Henderson. They know Henderson's the guy. They want to give Xavier Jones carries. They want to give Jake Funk. They want to give Raymond Calais and Otis Anderson. One thing I'll say is I think Otis Anderson has more of a chance to make this roster than people give him credit for. And I will end it on that. So I love y'all. I appreciate y'all for taking time on a Friday to watch us talk. And hope you guys learned something. Maybe, maybe not. I'll be back soon. So will Blaine. You guys take care. Have a great night. Go check out downtownrams.com. Later.